Spoiler alert, leather is discussed on this list, and I keep saying it had, in its originally intended form, had 3 LPs, 6 sides, but it had 4 LPs, 8 sides, and Greggary Peccary would have been on the 8th side and not the 6th side. There would be 7 sides preceding that. I made that mistake. I don't know why. I just was obsessed with the CDs, and 3 was stuck in my mind. But yeah, anyways, I just gave that one away. But onto the list for reals. What's up, people? My name is Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, devoting this channel to ranking and reviewing all the Zappa, just all the Zappa. And I'm taking a break from ranking the 26 tours to briefly discuss something that I brought up in my review of 200 Motels, the 6 CD 50th anniversary box set. There are a selection of tracks on the end of disc 2 on that box, which, I argue, had Frank released those tracks plus thrown in a couple other tracks that fit in, that would have been one of Frank's best CDs ever. It's essentially all of the groupie tracks, going from Road Ladies all the way from What Will This Evening Bring Me This Morning. And I said that What Will This Evening Bring Me This Morning, if that CD had been released, would thus be the best closing track Frank had on any album, just because it is such a beautiful melody. And every time I even think about that song, I just get the, what will I say the next day to whatever I drag to my motel tonight, stuck in my head for just hours, if not days. But then I realized that actually, Frank does a really, really fantastic job of ending his albums already. And so because lists are awesome and 10 is an awesome list number, here are my 10 favorite album closing tracks from Frank Zappa. These are tracks that I've only considered things that Frank had a hand in. A couple of them are post passing away, post 93 releases, but Frank pretty much made these anyways. They just weren't released in his lifetime, but the track listing was his. So anyways, yeah, that's all this is. I'm just going to tell you which ones are excellent album closers and why I think they're excellent album closers. We're going to start with number 10. This is Weasels Ripped My Flesh, the title track off of Weasels Ripped My Flesh, hence why it's called the title track. This is essentially about 1 minute and 37 seconds of white noise. The band plays a song, and then they end with a bang, just, you know, like almost if Jimmy Carl Black or whoever's on drums, if Jimmy Carl Black had just been like doing like a black metal, just sort of you know, one of those, why am I missing the name of that beat? But just like doing that on the drums, it would have sounded like the birth of black metal right here. But it's essentially 1 minute and 30 seconds of noise. Then Frank goes, good night, and you hear audience applause, and the album ends. It's not a live album. It's a mix of both live and studio stuff. But it's a great ending, and it's also, I think, a very logical, like, there are 2 more album endings on this list that I think if you were listening to Frank back in the 60s and 70s and like listening to his albums in order, when you get to this track, you're going to be a little confused because you're like, okay, is this all this is going to be noise, or is it going to maybe devolve into something else? And so there's that like, whoa, but then it doesn't. It just is that noise. And I think it's just a beautiful way to end his most probably, I don't know if difficult's the right word, but his most eclectic, chaotic, sort of mad album that he released. Number 10, Weasels Rip My Flesh. Number 9 is Muffin Man off Bongo Fury. The reason I really like this as a closing track is because Bongo Fury is just a weird album. It's a weird live document of the Spring 75 tour that featured Captain Beefheart. So you get a mix of like live tracks on here that are excellent, and then some tracks that are studio, right in the middle. And then this is both. The Muffin Man has like a studio portion of it where Frank's doing the lyrics, and then they cut to a live version of it in which he's overdubbed lyrics because Muffin Man did not have lyrics on this opening tour. It was just that riff and a guitar solo. So you get the studio, then you get the live part with overdubbed lyrics, and then you get the closing of the song where Frank, you know, says goodnight, Austin, Texas, wherever you are. So it's just a weird mix. It's a weird track on a weird album, and I just can't think of a better way to end this album than this. It just works perfectly. And it is such a powerful song and such an amazing riff. So it gets points for being that. But yeah, so it's just, I think it's a great closer to Bongo Fury. Number 8 is Bavarian Sunset off Transfusion. Transfusion was a guitar solo only album released after Frank passed away. But I had seen, I think I have actually a tape of what was most of the songs that were eventually released, and that I had gotten almost early in my tape trading experience, that had been circulating, I think, during Frank's lifetime. I think the set list had been around, and it just took a while for it to be released, but I think it was in the works when Frank passed away. If it wasn't, sticking with it anyways. If it wasn't, substitute the final solo for guitar. It ain't necessarily the St. James Infirmary. I only wanted to put one of those on this list, but just if Transfusion doesn't work, substitute that because that's also a great closing. But what this is it's the last solo on an album of just solos. The album does open up with Chunga's Revenge, and the Chunga's Revenge features Dweezil and Frank. Bavarian Sunset features Dweezil and Frank. And it's not a solo from a song. It's after they ended I Am the Walrus. You can hear the horns, the last horns of I Am the Walrus on the bit of this. And then they just go into where they just do this closing solo. And it sounds like you're sitting on a boat watching the sunset over the river as you head off to the east, and you're just on the back watching the wake and the sun's going down as you're floating on the Rhine. I think the Rhine runs north-south. I don't know. I'm not from Europe. I think it runs north-south, so I don't know how you would see the sunset, but maybe you're just sitting somewhere in Bavaria watching the sunset. But it's a great song. It feels like a sunset. It's just, yeah, it just works. It's a great way to end this album. The fact that Dweezil returns on it and is also playing with Frank on this sort of, bookends the albums with Dweezil Frank experiences, and it's just a nice way to end this single CD release of guitar solo albums. Number 7 is Stuff Up the Cracks on Cruising with Ruben and the Jets. That is a sort of 50s doo-wop album that's pretty much straightforward doo-wop. But this last track, which is You're Gonna Stuff Up the Cracks, and I think he even says I'm gonna stuff up my cracks and kill myself. Like he's pretty explicit about why he's stuffing up the cracks. Ends with a guitar solo. The only guitar solo on the album, and it's the last thing you hear on the album, and it's a great guitar solo, and it just has a great vibe on it, and it's just, I remember the first time I heard this album, way back in the pre-internet days, I really didn't know, I knew what it was, but I didn't know any information about the individual tracks, and then to finally get to that last track, and there's a guitar solo, like a lengthy sort of Frank jam. It's a really good feeling. It's a great way to end this album, and yeah, Stuff Up the Cracks, number 7. Number 6, Joe's Garage. 3, A Little Green Rosetta. So this is just kind of a throwaway track. A Little Green Rosetta had been circulating since, early on. It was a little snippet of it, kind of made it on Leather, which wasn't released until after Frank passed away. But it is just that little green Rosetta. It's just the same thing over and over and over again for almost 10 minutes. And Frank tells jokes and he challenges the band to play reggae backwards and do all this crazy stuff. And you hear the click track and there's a whole bunch of people singing along. It's sort of like what Strictly Genteel is to 200 Motels. It's like, we just finished Joe's Garage. We're going to get the whole cast together and do one more utterly pointless. There's just no purpose. It has nothing to do with the rest of the album. And I think I like that because Joe's Garage is an album that starts off incredibly focused, I think. And then Frank just has so many targets he wants to take shots at or things he wants to address that by the time you get to the end of it, it's just like, what? This really? Okay, I guess. Yeah, that made sense that we discussed all those things in this journey. But to put this at the end, just sort of this nonsense song, it's just it feels good. It's a fun way to end the album. And I think it kind of underscores hey, don't take any of this too seriously. Enjoy it, but don't take any of it too seriously, man. And I think that's the message I get from having Little Green Rosetta as the last track on Joe's Garage. Number 5 is Chrome-Plated Megaphone of Destiny off We're Only In It For The Money. This is pretty much just a percussion piece that's supposed to, there's a little story in the liner notes about how if you read Franz Kafka's the trial. This is the soundtrack to the machine etching your crime on your back. It works. Like I could see this in a movie. But the neat thing about this as an album closer is we're only in it for the money, as some of Frank's just best pop melodies over and over and over again. And you don't go, it seems, more than like 2 minutes without some random editing thing come in or some random left turn musically or something happening. But no, this is almost like 7 minutes of just like this composition of just this like percussion tinkering, it sounds like. And if you were following Frank back in the 60s, this is another case where you had heard Freak Out and that ending song, which is like 12 minutes, but that ending song goes places by the end, devolves more into madness, but it goes places. So I would imagine you would get this and think, okay, what's going to happen in the course of this 6.5 minutes? And pretty much not much happens. It just kind of tinkers its way through etching its crime on your back, your crime on its back, it's your crime on your back. And so I just like that. I think Frank's messing with expectations. It's at the end of an album that is so pure and so sweet and has so many amazing melodies with some darker lyrics. To end with this, I think is just so Frank. I don't know. So Zappa. Just a beautiful example of Zappa being Zappa. Number 4, America Drinks and Goes Home off Absolutely Free. Just your cocktail lounge. It's closing time. You can hear drinks. You can hear people chatting. Ray Collins is friggin' hilarious on vocals. This is just like your cheesy sort of like, bands do this a lot. I don't know if Frank was the first, but they throw in this cheesy, what sounds like you'd hear it in a Ramada Inn or Howard Johnson's like lounge. It's just like, all right, it's closing time, get your drinks, little bands kind of just vamping in the back. This has a little more arrangement to it because it's Frank. And then Frank would do instrumental versions of this on Petit Wazoo, the Christmas 76 shows that are just amazing. But here with the vocals and the full like background noise and the ambiance and the feel that you're in a nightclub, just a perfect way to end Frank's album, which is kind of his most, very much a commentary on suburban America and just high school life and, people living, white America and the way they're living in the 60s. And this is the perfect closer. I grew up in Huntington Beach, California, and we had a bar there. I think it was called the Lamplighter, but it was one of those no windows places that was kind of always kind of half crowded, like on weekend nights. And then even during the day, there'd be cars out there, and I never went inside because I, moved away before I became old enough to go in. But I just felt like late nights on Friday and Saturday, there'd be, this song could be playing and people are desperately trying to hook up and before they head home or get one more drink in them before they go back to their suburban life. So I don't know. It just works perfectly for what this entire album is. Number 3, Greggary Peccary off Leather. Leather was another one not released until after Frank passed away, but it had been floating around the set list and all that. And so Greggary Peccary, it's the entire sixth side of a six, was it 6 sides? Yeah. The 6th side of a 3 LP, 6-side extravaganza that covers like over the course of the first 5 sides, you get some live stuff, you get some instrumental stuff, you get some comedy stuff, you get some more classical jazz stuff, and you get Filthy Habits, you get some mean stuff, covers all the bases. And then the last side is this 20-minute piece of music that somehow is completely different than the entire first 5 sides of music that preceded it. Like, it's just how are you able to do this? And the fact that he puts it last and it's just like, thank you for sitting through that first part. Now I got 20 more minutes to utterly challenge you and utterly blow your mind. And I think its placement at the end of Leather as opposed to its opening or side A version of Studio Tan, it just works so much better, especially if you listen to that album in order and you're like, all right, I made it to the last side. And you're like, oh, now I got this to deal with. Good on you, Frank. Good on you, man. That's brilliant. Number 2, 200 Motels. The Strictly Genteel and the hidden, not listed on the official album, the 200 Motels finale, which you can hear a live version of that indexed separately as a track on stage 6. But that's kind of like the ending to Joe's Garage. And like the entire cast is there. They're singing a song. This, of course, is the music itself is Strictly Genteel. That awesome just what he would play as an instrumental in 78 and then in the 80s. So you get Strictly Genteel, and then it ends with the dun 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 dun, that part, that little thing, and then it transitions into the 200 Motels finale, and then that kind of has a little meltdown thing where kind of chaos starts to seep in towards the end. But it's a great ending to a very strange album. It is like 11 minutes long because Frank does not separate the finale out of Strictly Genteel. So I like the fact that those things are packaged together. I think had just Strictly Genteel been the closer and you didn't have that finale, it would still make this list. It probably wouldn't be number 2. But I just think that's an excellent closer. You get that orchestral power of Frank's writing. And then Flo and Eddie kind of come in to give you more like, all right, we're going to rock out one more time. You know, talking about the Light Bulb Man, talking about the Makeup Man, the Makeup, whatever he sings. But just a fun song. And then number 1, the best closer, just absolutely just genius. And that is The Return of the Son of Monster Magnet. Return of the Son of Monster Magnet. Why does that never sound right when I say it? The Return of the Son of the Monster Magnet? No, I don't think there's a "the" in it, which is always like tricks me. So the ending of Freak Out. Like Freak Out, my only complaint with Freak Out the album is I wish Who Are the Brain Police was the last track on side B and not the third track on side A, because I do think that there is this sort of the Return of the Son of Monster Magnet. Yeah, there's no the Monster Magnet. It's because there's this progression from like, yeah, Frank's weird from the get-go, and Hungry Freak's Daddy, the title itself kind of says it all, but that's a pretty kind of straightforward song. And then you just get all these relatively straightforward songs on side A and B that are subversive, mostly lyrically. You know, and Frank, again, he throws in kazoos and throws in other stuff. But Who Are the Brain Police is kind of the one standout musically that gets weirder and darker and psychier. And I think had that been the last track on side B, it would have set up the listener more for the transition into like the Dylan-esque but darker version that Trouble Every Day is. And then you got the Help I'm a Rock, which what is that? Can't Happen Here, vocalness, and then Return of the Son of Monster Magnet, Return of the Son of Monster Magnet. I don't know why that always gets me. Which is like the first 6-7 minutes is a bunch of people in a warehouse playing percussion and making loud noises. And then after that ends, you get Frank, just all kinds of little snippets of Frank like leading the band, a little vocal thing, and just kind of like chaos seeping in and things almost like unraveling before your very ears/eyes, because it is music. But it's just like makes the experience of listening to that first album like perfect. Like you started off in Hungry Freak's Daddy, a short little, you know, rock song with a nice little guitar solo, and then you end up with 12 minutes of just insanity. Like, and it's just that progression is just absolutely brilliant. It's an amazing way to end the album. So that's it. Yeah, that's all. Just my 10 favorite closing tracks. I would have put King Kong on here if King Kong from Uncle Meat, if it did not have the thrown at the end of it, the live Miami on the flatbed truck thing. I just think that robs that of some of its power. I think if it had just been like that studio version just slapped on there, that might have been made this list, but I did think about it. And also Valerie, I want to give a shout out to Valerie on Burnt Weenie Sandwich, which is another amazing closer. It bookends with WPLJ as like this amazing, almost all instrumental album with these 2 R&B covers to open up. Just brilliant. But anyways, that's it. Thoughts, comments, all that stuff. And I'm going to be getting to my number 10 tour soon if you're watching that happen in real time. All right, that's it. Peace, thanks. Leave comments below. Comment. Have a great day.